Good evening, everyone. We are continuing on in Hosea chapter 9, reading from verse 1. It reads this way. It says, "Do not rejoice, O Israel, with exultation or rejoicing, like the nations, for you have played the harlot, forsaking your God. You have loved harlot's earning on every threshing floor." Now, when we come to such verses, understand a few things as well. Number one, the focus is on Israel. This is the northern kingdom. It says, "Do not rejoice." The word rejoice here really means be glad. Do not be glad with the way that the nations rejoice. Now, this is the word exaltation really means, how should we say? It is expressing joy by, well, I guess by dancing in a circle, right? Many ancient tribal people do that. When they are very happy, very glad, they would join hands in a circle and they would rejoice. So it says, do not be like these nations, these people, right? These peoples who are out there who are not Israel. For you have played the harlot. Now, the word played the harlot is, you would say that they are going after other gods. And it says here, forsaking your God. The word forsaking, maybe it's not expressed this way. It says, for you have played the harlot from depending on God. Okay, so forsaking your God can be retranslated as away from your God. So when they play the harlot, they are into idolatry. And as you know, idolatry is to serve other gods. Now, I would encourage you all to go back and read Exodus chapter 20. And in Exodus chapter 20, and it's famously called the Ten Commandments, there are a number of verses when God says, do not have any other gods before me. Do not go and serve other gods. Now, this is the concept of this English translation, forsaking your God. Basically, is to go away from God. Hosea says, you have loved the harlot's earnings. Now, what do you mean by harlot's earnings? This is actually the, how should we say, this is the price of harlotry. It is also the reward given to harlots. Now, these are women who goes to the threshing floor, and instead of harvesting and plucking or gleaning, they will actually entertain the men who has harvested, and then they would be paid in kind. And so this is the concept here. They have played the harlot and they have enjoyed receiving the rewards from the other men, so to speak, so the other nations. And so continuing on verse 2, threshing floor and winepress will not feed them. Understand this. When you have loved the harlot's earnings, meaning they are actually playing the harlot so that they can feed themselves. And God says, well, it will not. The new wine will fail them. The word fail them literally means will disappoint them. Disappoint is the word. You can also say that it will deceive them. So if you are familiar with the history of the Northern Kingdom, they have been played out. They were played out by Egypt, right? By Egypt as well. And so God is saying, you go after other gods, you go after other nations, and it will not bring you anything good. I wanted to point out to you the pronouns. In verse 1, the you, in this case, really is in the singular, right? It's in the singular. And the reason being is that it is with regards to Israel. And Israel is singular. And that's why the word you, right? The word you is being used. When you come to verse 3, in verse 3, it says, they will not remain in the Lord's land, but Ephraim will return to Egypt, and Israel, Assyria, they will eat unclean food. Now, in this case, now we have a plural, they, and is with reference to Ephraim. Now, this is singular, and Ephraim is a dual. And that is how the pronouns are used. Now, we don't see that very much or very clearly in the English language, but it is very much in the Hebrew. So understand that they refer to Ephraim, you refer to Israel, mainly because Ephraim is in the dual number, and so they use a plural to represent. Now, they will not remain in the Lord's land, meaning they will not continue to live, or I think this would be the word, they will not continue to stay in the land. Now, this is very prophetic, as you can tell, because God is saying that they, Ephraim, will not remain in the land of Israel. Although they are in the northern part, they will not. So what is going to happen is the prophecy is saying that they will return to Egypt. What do you mean return to Egypt? Return to depend on Egypt. And then in Assyria, they will eat unclean foods, which tells us something very interesting. With regards to Egypt, it is a dependence. With regards to Assyria, they are going to live there. You see, this is the terminology of Hosea chapter 9. And right off the bat, God is telling them what is going to happen in the future is that they will turn to Egypt for help. But then, right at the end, Assyria will be taking them away, that they will eat what they have in Assyria. And you know, in Assyria, they eat all kinds of things. And these people are going to live there. Verse 4. Verse 4 says this, they will not pour out drink offerings of wine to the Lord. Now, I'm not sure whether you're familiar with this. Wine offerings is when they will pour on the ground the wine. And basically, That is what they call libation, right? Libation. The wine offering to God. These offerings or their sacrifices will not please God. God is no longer happy with them. See, I think we can understand that when the people is not right with God, God really doesn't care about their sacrifices and offering. When the people are right with God, then the sacrifices and offering mean something because it is part and parcel of a close, intimate relationship between God and his people. But when his people are not obedient and is seeing an impending doom and eventual judgment, God is saying the bread will be like mourner's bread. All who eat of it will be defiled. For their bread will be for themselves alone, and it will not enter the house of the Lord. It cannot be used for offering, and God is not happy with that. So what will you do on the day of the appointed festival and on the day of the feast of the Lord? These are all, well, we had covered a topic on the festivals and feast days and holy days. These are God's appointments with his people, right? And they will come together on specific days of specific months to do specific things. And these are God's rules. And so as a people of God, they have to do that. So God's asking them, what are you going to do when the time comes? In verse 6, it tells us this. For behold, they will go because of destruction. The word destruction is violence, right? Because of violence. Egypt will gather them up. Memphis will bury them. Weeds will take over the treasures of silver. Thorns will be in their tents. What basically they're telling them is they will be impoverished, right? And their friends will not be their friends because Egypt is not a friend at all. And whatever they have will be gone. The land that they have is no longer. And so the land will be barren. Verse 7. The days of punishment have come. I think you would like to understand this word punishment. The word punishment is visitation. And it comes from the word pakad, right? It comes from the word pakad. And yesterday we have seen this word before. And in Exodus chapter 20, God says, if you go after idolatries, I will visit your future generations to the third and fourth generation. So the word visit is this word. God is going to visit them, but of course, this word would be visit them in judgment. That's what it means. Visit them in judgment. When the time of God's judgment is coming, when the days of retribution have come, now understand, retribution is reward. Now, this is not reward because they have done something good. This is reward because of something bad that they have done. Now, this one is an A and a B. Let Israel know this. The prophet is a fool. The inspired man is demented, has gone crazy because of the grossness of your iniquity, because your hostility is so great. God is telling them that they have a multitude of sins. And they have much animosity, enmity, right? Enmity or animosity. And all this is against God. And so what is happening is that when God comes and they will consider the prophet as a fool, the inspired man, which is a sage, right? I guess the man that is the inspired man would be man with wind. Man with ruach. So this is A and B. They will consider the Navi a fool. They will consider the inspired man that has wind, right? Inspiration, to be demented, to be mad, right? Demented is mad, crazy. And so this is the outcome of the time in the future. Upon the time when God sends his judgment, the nation of Israel, the northern kingdom, has fallen into such destitute to treat the men of God as an enemy. Verse 8, Ephraim was a watchman with my God, a prophet, yet the snare of a bird catcher is in all his ways, and there is only hostility in the house of his God. When Ephraim deals with God's people, he deals with God's people as enemy. And so the treatment, when they are supposed to serve God, they treat the people of God, people who serve God, as enemies. As enemies. Verse 9. They have gone deep in depravity, as in the days of Gavia. The word here in verse 9 is giva, right? Giva. He will remember their iniquity. He will punish their sins. Again, here is an A and a B. Now, this verse is really to tell them that they are very deep. They have caused themselves, right? They have gone deep. They have caused to go deep. They have caused themselves to go deep. And this word shakat, into corruption. Right? Into corruption. Things that is in decay. As in the days of give up. Now this would be in Judges 19, if I'm not mistaken. So if you have a chance, go back and read Judges 19. How a Levite's wife, when they came to Gibeah, or here is Gibeah, right? It's actually pronounced as Gibeah. She was raped till she died. And so the Levite chopped her into 12 pieces and sent her body parts to 12 tribes to summon them to come to his judgment, to then apply justice upon the tribe of Benjamin. And in that day, if it went through the tribe of Benjamin, because of their sins of raping that Levite's wife, would have been completely destroyed. And so the sins of Gibeah is a very unique and very grievous day. And God says, I will remember. I will remember what they have done. I will punish. So the word remember their iniquity is equal to punishing their sins. Verse 10. Now, verse 10 says, I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. Wild grapes, basically, it says this. Grapes in the desert. I saw your forefathers as the earliest fruit on the fig tree in its first season. And so these would be the first time that the fig tree is bearing fruit. And the forefathers would be the ones who have entered into the promised land. And they are the first, and everyone was obedient. But in the travels, they came to Baal Peor. And this has to do with the women of Moab. And also with the prophet Baalim, right? And here we are duly reminded they devoted themselves to shame and they became detestable as that which they loved. The idea here is the display of love, and this display of love is idolatry. That was what happened in Baal Peor. And so God reminds them right at that point in time before they entered into the promised land. And when we get to that chapter in the book of Numbers, we would like to then pay attention to some of these elements. God says, I remember them. And as for Ephraim, their glory will fly away like a bird. No birth, no pregnancy, no conception. What does that mean? Now again, Ephraim, their. This is in the plural. Because Ephraim is in the dual. Ephraim's glory will fly away like a bird. The word fly away basically means to go into obscurity. Right? Go into obscurity. That is the understanding of, the glory will fly away. Nobody will remember them anymore. There will be no birth, no pregnancy, no conception, no return of Ephraim. That is the picture that's given. It's not to say that Ephraim has no children being born, but Ephraim will no longer be remembered. They will go into obscurity and there will be no birth, no pregnancy, no conception. Nobody will remember what Ephraim is. Now, if you think about it, this is really very much after Assyria attacked the northern kingdom, took Samaria, removed them to Assyria, they ate unclean food, and eventually got dispersed into all the nations of the world. And as today, we really don't know who is Ephraim. Although God says in the end times, he will bring them back, but as of today, this is what has happened. We don't know who is Ephraim. Verse 12. For they bring up their children, but yet I will bereave them till not a man is left. So woe to them when I depart from them. This idea is I depart from them. This word means I turn away from them. So if you recall in chapter 1, the one of the son of Hosea is Lo Ami, not my people. And this should give us a picture of what it means by not my people. When God says, I will depart, I will turn away from them, and they will not be able to remember. Nobody remembers them anymore. When they bring up their children, they will be bereaved of their children, basically made childless. God is now painting a picture that they will be barren. There will be no children. Nobody will remember Ephraim. Now, when we say Ephraim, I would want us to bear in mind that Ephraim refers to the entire northern nation of the 10 tribes. And so all of them will be forgotten. So Ephraim is merely a representative tribe, the lead tribe of the northern kingdom. Verse 13, Ephraim, as I have seen, is planted in a pleasant meadow like Tyre or Sor. Now, the word Sor is Tyre. It's a city in the northern part of the Mediterranean coast. They are seafaring people. But Ephraim will bring out his children for slaughter. What do you mean for slaughter? Now, in verse 13 is a very interesting verse because it talks about Tyre, and Tyre says in a pleasant meadow. This is in tranquility. They are in peace. Everything is great. But what's going to happen is Ephraim is going to bring out his children for slaughter. And the idea is slaughter is to kill, right? To kill them for idols. They practice offering children to the idols. And so this is what it means, bring out children for slaughter. Carrying on in verse 14, in the same theme, give them, O Lord, what will you give? Give them a miscarrying womb and dry breasts. What does that mean? Miscarrying womb cannot bear children. Cannot carry to full term. Dry breast cannot nurse children. That is the picture here. What is God saying? Well, they are all in the same boat. There won't be children. And whenever they have children, the children will die. They will be malnourished and they will die of hunger. There is no food for them. God doesn't want them to be remembered again. Verse 15. All their evil, and by evil, this is Ra. This word is Ra'ah, right? Ra'ah. At Gilgal, and Gilgal is an idolatrous place. I came to hate them there because of the wickedness of their deeds. I will drive them out of my house. I will love them no more. All their princes are rebels. Let's break this down. It says all their evil is at Gilgal. Gilgal is a place of idol worship. So God calls it by the name. So I came to hate them there. The word hate is to turn away from them, right? Turn away from them. Because God sees the idols, God is not happy. Because of the wickedness, the word wickedness is Ra, of their deeds. The word deeds here are practices. And in this context, idolatrous, right? Idolatrous. So God hates all this. So God says, I am going to drive them out. These are very important words that we need to express. Drive them out. Expel. Right? Expel. Cast out. Like how man was cast out of the Garden of Eden. God drove them out. So this is the same phrase. I will cast them out of my house, God's temple. The next line is, I will love them no more. Remember, God loves Israel, isn't it? We've always seen that I will love them no more, but the word here is God will always provide and protect. This is ahav. This is love, the Hebrew way of love. The giving, and the protection. God says, I will love them no more. I'm not going to protect them. When Assyria comes down, be my guest. Go take them. All their princes, their chiefs, are rebels. Now, the word rebel here is stubborn. Okay, is stubborn. They backslide. They slide back. They slide back from God. So the idea here is, if this is a path to God, what they are doing is they are going away from God. And this is the way, the idea of the picture of rebellion. Going away from God, sliding away from God, and it's termed as rebellion. It is, well, in a picture form, it is going round and round and round and round, and it's going out, right? It's going out of the path. Verse 16 and 17. We will look at this as a pair of verses. It says, Ephraim is stricken, their root dried up. They will bear no fruit. Even though they bear children, I will slay the precious ones of their womb. Now, we need to be careful with words like this. Let's explain. Ephraim is stricken. Nakah is beaten. Okay, is beaten. She is scourged. I think that's a good word. Scourged. Which means that it will give you the imagery that they are going to be beaten really badly by the Assyrians. Then it says here, their root will dry up. What about the root? The root means the source of life. In every tree, the root is the most important. It is for a few things. When you talk about root, it is talking about a source of life. It is talking about firmness, being planted in. And so in this case, the root is dried up, means they can be plucked up and transferred away. So there's no more source of life. There's no more firmness. They will bear no fruit. They are a tree that is of no use. Just like if you were to plant durian trees and all you get is leaves, well, there's no fruit. There's obviously of no use, right? No use. It says, even though they bear children. So bear children means to beget. right? Begat. Bring forth children. And then it says, I will slay their precious one. The idea of precious one is their their affection. I think that would be a good way to say this. Their affection. The affection is on the child. I will kill the affection of their womb. And whatever they bear, it will be gone. God says he will cause to die, right? He will execute. Basically, no descendants. Right? No descendants. And the whole idea here is God is painting a picture that Ephraim, this will be the 10 tribes, will be no more. They were taken away. They will bear children and nobody will recognize them. The last verse concludes chapter 9. He says, my God will cast them away. The word cast them away now is another word. Here, cast them away is going to reject them. God is going to, how should we say, despise them. Despise them. God is going to refuse them. And so we have Lo Ruhama. And then Lo Ami. These are the two of the last sons, one daughter and one son of Gomer, and this is in the vision. It is really to tell them, when it says Lo Ruhama, means God is not going to forgive you. You are going to be held accountable and you're going to be judged. Lo Ami means God is going to reject you and God is going to ignore you and deny you because they have not listened to him. They will be wanderers among the nations. So let's conclude with this verse. What does it mean that they have not listened to him? The word listen here is to hear. To hear means to obey. To pick up the sounds, to think about it, to understand, and to do something about it. That's why we use the word obey for the word hear. The final word here would be wanderers. The word wanderers here would be people who are wandering abroad. Now, what does that mean? It means that these are people that's not going to be in their land. They are going to be in the land of the nations. This is the word goyim. The nations. Occasionally in the English Bible, this is also translated as Gentiles or non-Israel nations. And by this, we conclude chapter 9 that Ephraim or Israel, the northern kingdom, is going to be cast away. God is going to reject them, refuse them, because they have not obeyed God. It is so important to obey God, isn't it? Is to listen to God, to hear. And so the greatest commandment that we have seen is Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, isn't it? This is Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Hear, O Israel. So in the Hebrew is Shema Israel. And basically that is to hear. Hear means to not just listen to the sound, right? You have to understand what is said And then the will must choose to do it. And hence the word obey. They have not listened to God. They didn't pay attention. They ignored God. And so God says that they will be wandering. They'll be running here and there. Well, we would say overseas, right? But they'll be wandering here and there outside their own land, in the land of the Goyim. And hence the northern kingdom will be dispersed. Now, we've not talked about the southern kingdom, which is Judah. And later on, you see that Judah is not dispersed. Judah is taken to Babylon and returned in part to Judah again. And so we was learned that even till today, Judah has come back to the land, meaning the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. But the rest of the tribes are still right here, wandering abroad. And with this, we come to the end of chapter 9.